world and all of that. So I take a lesson from that comment. Thank you.
Oh, how do I decide who to give the mic to? Your call.
You can pass it to Mr. Kovacek. Thank you.
Thank you for this question. I would like a little bit say why I decided to run for the politics in Canada. Not for the title, not for the paycheck. The reason I decided to do this to send example to all Canadians, all immigrants, just to show everybody that we live in the best country in the world. And somebody like me can come here 14 years ago with no English, follow the rules, never go on employment, start own business and grow over 12 people on payroll and build community, pay money to the boost to local economy. And I also know teachers here, John and Bruce. I actually took lots of students to work, to teach them carpentry for 8 weeks. And this was difficult decision for me to make because I'm successful businessman because Canada gave me the opportunity. But also I knew I'm gonna be exposed to the public and I will have tough questions. And also I have 2 kids. Actually, I'm doing this to bring something fresh to the Kingston and to the Canadian politics and set an example that Canada #1 and we have to respect each other. And in the end, I want to serve everybody and unite Canadians, not divide Canadians. Thank you for your question.
Thank you. Anybody else in the panel like to respond? If not,
very quickly.
Okay.
This is my first time running in politics, but I've spent a lot of time developing policy, and as you would have heard, I've worked with the Liberals before, because inherently I'm a policy person. I'm not a party person. And one of the reasons why that I ran with the Green Party is because we aren't whipped, and so we have the ability to make our own decisions in terms of how we're going to vote on the floor, for example. But I think that really, I actually want to shout out to my colleagues because we've done this a few times now, and I think really compared to what you saw in the federal debate, we are actually collegiate. I think we could all go and, have a pint and have a few laughs. We could probably no, I'm the little party. You're the one with the war chest, not me. But in the end, one of the things, for example, when I draw on what the Liberals did is that I want to ensure that people understand the different approaches to policy. So for example, the Liberals and Conservatives often are talking about either, changes to taxation and, tweaking different programs, whereas our foundation is universal. We're really trying to look at universal programming. So if I highlight something from my colleagues, it's not really a dig so much as to let people know that these are 2 very different approaches to doing things. And my colleague Andy Brooks has also mentioned that, right? So I think in fairness, I think we've been pretty good.
Thank you. Mr. Brooke, if you would like a last remark. Just a heads up, we will move to closing remarks at 4:20 sharp, giving you each 2 minutes, so you have just over 15 minutes for an open forum left. Thank you.
This is an excellent question, and thank you for validating what I try to do. Having just said that, I'm also aware of the fact that I made the Grassy Narrows comment, and that could be taken as a jab at Mr. Garrison. And actually, if I'm totally honest with you, it was. There are some things that bring color to my cheeks, but I've been really well behaved otherwise. And I do make an effort, because in the RCMP I was very measured, but one of the things some people tell me is that, Andy, you're so darn measured and in control. Sometimes people want to see the color in your cheeks. So I chose on that particular one, which does get me going. We are all accountable, so your question is good, and whoever you send to Ottawa remains accountable. On October 21st, he or she does not get to go off and right off into the sunset of north, or however you look at the metaphor. We are accountable to, and any MP who is not accountable and who does not answer questions and respond to them like this, like you've asked, for the next 4 years, or 8 years, or 12 years, should not be going to Ottawa.
Great. Thank you, Beth. I believe you had a question at the back of the room.
I do.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for that. That question was awesome because the first thing you all did was put your books down and just talk to us. So thank you. It was really refreshing and great. So my question is, what do you feel are the biggest issues facing the Kingston community, and how do you plan to prioritize and mirror these federally?
Is that to every candidate?
To every candidate.
How do you want an answer?
Yes, to every candidate. Mr. Burke, you have the microphone. You may begin.
Housing, accessibility, and affordability is a top issue. This may not come out in any particular order. I'm concerned about the lake levels, Plan 2014, I've mentioned that already in the IJC. I'm concerned about the labor situation. There's a strike that's been going on since the end of June. I'm very familiar with that strike. And I know one of the issues actually, although it's a provincially regulated situation, and again, this party respects jurisdictions, there's actually a Treasury Board component to this. There's a missing mechanism of transparency, and I will be taking that and addressing that, I hope, in the next 3 weeks. I'm not afraid to stand up and speak, so I'll give something that's not Kingston related, but it is actually in a way. Phoenix Pay System drives me natters, and I haven't even been personally touched by it. But it's getting nowhere. None of us, honestly, I shouldn't speak for anybody else, but we don't have a fix for it, quite frankly. So what can I do as an MP? So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. My first act as a member of Parliament will be I'll bring a motion in the House that all MPs forego their salaries until the pay issues are resolved. Now, everybody smiles when I say that generally, but I'll tell you one thing, I'll put the focus on it and it will happen as quick as it possibly can, and I mean it. Other issues, homelessness is a big thing with me. Veterans homelessness and homelessness isn't veterans. There is no moral or social justification for homelessness.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. Mr. Walker?
So the question was about the big issues for us and what we're going to do to address them in the Kingston context? Was that the
Well, the
question?
other way around, Kingston context mirrored federally.
Okay. So in terms of what's going on here in Kingston, a lot of the same issues. I think climate change continues to be a huge concern. We're all worried about rising water levels and how much carbon we're putting into the environment. And the effect that's having on local weather patterns, and I think our New Deal for People, that key plan that we have to address the environment, that should we take government or should we be in a position to influence the sitting government, I would work very hard as your MP to make sure that a lot of our environmental planks and our environmental plans get enacted at the local level, right? Working with the provincial government, working with the municipal government as well. I think another issue that bedevils Kingston, and I mentioned this during the course of the roundtable, the debate, whatever this was, is talking about the housing crisis here in Kingston. And also, I talked about our plan for 500,000 units of housing in Kingston and the various ways in which we are going to try and get people into affordable housing. One of my key jobs as an MP would be to make sure and fight to get a good portion of those homes here in Kingston, right? Because there's an acute need, right? So my job as an MP, and I think for anybody on this panel, would be, and I'm sure Mark has had the experience, typically the larger cities and their problems tend to overshadow some of the smaller centers. So being a champion for a smaller Canadian city like Kingston would be one of my top priorities. And lastly, something that really hasn't come up that much on this panel is my concerns about immigration and my concerns about some of the attitudes towards newcomers in Canada that have begun to surface, say in the last 3 years of political discourse. One of the reasons why I decided to run, it's my view that Kingston is one of those communities that really does need, to make sure that we keep Kingston a welcoming community, that we need the talents and the resources and the energy that those folks have to offer the city. And that would be another thing I would be a champion for in Ottawa. I really do think that immigration is vitally important for a whole host of reasons.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Ms. Christman-City-Wish?
Yes, thank you. So the Green Platform is very holistic. It's very, and unlike a lot of other party platforms, which tend to be very linear, ours is very interconnected. And so to try and piece apart, for example, if we talk about creating jobs, well, that is tied into the green economy, which is tied into dealing with climate change. So with that being said, my own personal passion, but also to whether I'm elected or not, but I can tell you for sure if I'm elected, is looking at the mental health and addictions crisis in our community. I am far too well acquainted with it based on my research, but I really feel when we look across populations, this is not an issue of poverty, this goes across social class, this is not an issue of age. There are kids that are dying that are way too young. There are veterans who are not well served and their families who are suffering. So one of the key pieces that I am looking at is creating a Healing Engagement Center here for youth aged 12 to 25, but also